Welcome back to Wheel of Fortune. All right, Ratty, congratulations on making it to the bonus round. Thanks, Pick. You said you had some family in the audience. Yeah, they're all out there rooting for me. All right, let's see if you can't make everyone proud. The category is small, sneaky, nasty pricks. As always, we give you the letters R, T, S, L, and E. All we need from you now is just 3 consonants and a vowel. Okay, I want a B, a D, and a G, please. And the vowel? An O, please. Okay, it looks like you're gonna get a lot of help. Remember, the category is small, sneaky, nasty pricks. I 10 seconds, Ratty. I know it, but I don't think I should say it. 5 seconds, Ratty. Okay. I'd like to solve the puzzle. Diggers! What? Oh, daggers. That makes sense. Daggers. Right. Can we get to a
Your team is getting bigger. Dwarf inbound.
Hello, everyone. This is the Hall of the Mountain King. I am the Mountain King, your host, and you should really stick around and watch the whole video. I worked really hard on it. Today, we're going to talk about the success that is Dark and Darker Season 9, what its most important changes are, and how they're going to affect the future of the game. It's a whole lot to talk about. Here's everything that we're going to cover in the video, and for your convenience, I've put chapters in the video and timestamps in the description. Let's get started. Now, for those of you who just joined us or may have just come back from a long break, welcome and welcome back. It's good to have you. Let me give you a quick history recap to catch you up on what's been going on lately. Earlier this year in 2026, at the beginning of Season 8, the former lead developer SDF, who's famous for his poor choices and bad design, finally passed the torch to another member of the IronMace team named Paul. And with Paul's leadership, Season 8 was an absolute success. We had massive improvements to quality of life, a complete overhaul to the melee combat system, updates to the fighter and the barbarian, and a new map in the form of the Fire Deep, a second level to the Goblin Caves. Overall, the community agrees that Season 8 was an absolute success, and it looks like Season 9 will continue that trend. Now that you're all caught up, let's talk about the overall theme for Season 9 and the flagship change for this season: the Inferno and the Inferno Overhaul. Let me just start off by saying that we are reminded once again with Season 9 that the visual design team and the sound design team of IronMace are the actual MVPs of this entire company, and they really knocked it out of the park again with Season 9. The Inferno got a whole new lineup of demonic enemies, a brand new boss in the form of the Demon Overseer, and we got new modules and updated modules as well. And on top of that, the Inferno also got a visual update. It's now darker, more red lighting. It really screams Hellfire, and it looks like an actual Inferno now. So how does the Inferno Overhaul affect the future of Dark and Darker? Well, to put it into words, what this Inferno Overhaul did was it actually gave the map its own identity that it didn't have before. And that's really the only point of contention over this update, is whether people like how it looked before or after, and the reasons why. It all really comes down to lighting. And what I mean is the Crypts, the Inferno, and the Goblin Caves are the 3 oldest maps in the entire game, and for a long time they've shared the same lighting scheme, that being a kind of lighter yellow light. And they've all felt very similar because of that, not just from their design, but because of the lighting. And because now the Inferno is different, it has a different lighting scheme, it feels a little alien and people are having trouble adapting. But I think this is overall a good thing, that each map is having its own flavor to it, its own unique interpretation of what it is. What this means going forward is that IronMace is going to focus on improving what we already have instead of wasting resources, making something entirely new. Think of the water map, for instance, which is going to stay abandoned for a long time without a lot of new stuff or updates to it or additional maps. Paul has redirected his focus from expanding the world to refining what's there and then eventually building more later. And I think that's a smart move, and that's what we're going to see with the example of the Inferno here. I think we'll get a update to either the crypts or the goblin caves, and then after that we'll get a first floor to the goblin caves, which was announced with this update. Now, the Inferno and the Inferno update might be the face of Season 9, but it's not what's actually drawing players in, no. What's actually putting us at 15,000 concurrent players is not a brand new map and a bunch of new monsters, no. It is a Battle Royale, Squire Royale. Squire Royale, it's a Battle Royale mode, it's in the name. It's only on the Ruins of the Forgotten Castle map right now, but it's a 3-level adventure where teams will start on the ruins, and then they'll go to the crypts, and then to the Inferno, and only up to 3 players can escape with all their loot. The loot drops are massively improved, and the PvP is crazy. And I'm having a lot of fun. A lot of people are having a lot of fun. And your favorite streamer will probably be getting in a couple of matches of Squire Royale or SR in between the highs and lows of the normal and high roller lobbies. And the irony of the whole thing is that right as SDF stepped away a couple months ago, now the game, all of a sudden, is the Battle Royale that he wanted it to be for so long. And as far as the effect that Squire Royale is going to have on the future of the game, it's actually pretty significant in that we finally have a clear border between the population that prefers the game to be a Battle Royale itself and the population that wants it to be an adventure game / dungeon crawler. I think Squire Royale is going to stay extremely popular going forward, and what it does is it gives kind of like a little box for Battle Royale players to go to so that Paul and the rest of IronMace can focus on making normal lobbies and high roller lobbies into that first-person Dungeons & Dragons session that you want to play with your friends. Next, we'll talk about class reworks for Season 9. Similar to what happened with Season 8, Paul is taking 2 of the base classes and updating them to try to put them more in line with the more recent classes in the form of Warlock, Bard, Sorcerer, and Druid. In Season 8, it was the Fighter and the Barbarian, and this season, it's going to be the Rogue and the Ranger. And we'll start with the Rogue. In Season 9, the Rogue got a decent spread of new abilities and passives, mostly focusing on throwing knives and dagger usage, and one passive ability that didn't make any sense at all. But among all of those, there's one ability and one passive that are more important and have more effect on the game than everything else. The headline ability that the Rogue got for this season is called Shadow Step. And what it does is, once activated, the next throwing knife or dagger strike that you make against a target will automatically teleport you behind that target. And finally, with Shadow Step, the Rogue has a gap closer of some kind to actually get it into the combat instead of having to hope that it can just sneak up or get a flank or something like that. And not only that, it also can help you get out of combat if you use it on your allies as well. There are some people who are concerned about whether or not it'll be an overpowered ability, but honestly, if you're not good at the game, you're not going to be able to get much use out of it. The people who will get the most use out of Shadow Step are people who actually know how to aim their throwing knives or can get in close enough to use a dagger. So it balances itself out by virtue of how it works. And what this means going forward is that IronMace is starting to look at options for gap closers or mobility for the other classes. And the other item that's important for the Rogue this season isn't actually anything new. This season, what IronMace did is they reworked the passive ability Creep for the Rogue. It still does everything that it does before, reducing your noise when you're crouching and increasing the speed at which you can sneak around when crouching. But what they actually did was they made it so that Creep also reduces the radius by which you're detected by monsters, which enforces the class fantasy of the Rogue of being sneaky. Unfortunately, what this means for the future of the game, though, is that much like the other cool stuff that the Rogue has, it's going to be cannibalized by the rest of the game. So what I am pretty confident is going to happen here pretty shortly, maybe even next season, is this radius, this detection radius thing for Creep will be improved for the Rogue, but also other classes will also get an ability to reduce the radius by which they're detected by monsters, maybe by resourcefulness improving it or agility or dexterity, but other classes will also be able to crouch and reduce the radius by which they're detected by monsters. It's sad that the Rogue is not going to have something unique anymore, but I'm sure they'll figure something else out. But luckily, there's a whole lot more of the class identity of the Rogue that you can explore with abilities and passives in the form of the Sword Dancer toe-to-toe dueling Rogue. Now that Rogue's out of the way, we'll talk about Ranger. And as expected, the Ranger's new abilities mostly comprise of being able to shoot differently or improving shooting in some way or another. But just like with the Rogue, there's one ability and one passive that actually have an impact on the rest of the game and aren't just more fluff added to the pile. The ability in question is called Explosive Shot, and what it does is upon activation for the next few seconds, every bolt and arrow that you fire will be explosive. And what that means is it'll land and hit the normal amount of damage, but after a couple of seconds, it'll explode in an AoE, causing magical fire damage. What this means for the future of the game is pretty significant, actually, in that this ability causing magical fire damage, which is affected by stats like magical power or additional magic damage or willpower, is that it unlocks more stats to be useful for classes, so that there's less dead rolls on gear. So prior to Season 9, if you were a ranger and you got additional magic power or willpower on a piece of gear, you would think, oh, well, this is a dead roll, and it's not useful at all. But what you can do now with an explosive shot build on a ranger is actually get some value out of stats like willpower and magical power and additional magical damage and so on. It really does pioneer the way forward for less stats to be dead rolls for certain classes, and potentially, hopefully, down the line, we can get a rework to different stats like knowledge and willpower, resourcefulness, etc., and give them more use so that they're useful for more classes and not just dead rolls. And then the passive ability of note for the ranger is First Aid, which allows you to use bandages and surgical kits faster and also be able to use them on your allies. I've talked about this a lot before on this channel, how really understanding the class identity of the ranger is really difficult to do, because the class really skirts the line between fighter, rogue, and druid, and it's hard to really find out where in that triangle the ranger sits. And there's no real wrong answer. A ranger prefers ranged combat, per the name, and they also have a certain other aspect that makes them unique, either like a fighter being able to do well with martial weapons, or rogue being sneaky, and like a druid having access to more natural magic. But what we need to understand is that IronMace's stance is firmly in the position that the ranger's class identity, in Dark and Darker at least, is shoot with ranged combat and have survivalist abilities in the form of being a utility pig for the class. And this is true if you think about it. Every other ability is something that has to do with a ranged weapon or shooting better, and then there's a few abilities that have to do with utility, like placing campfires down faster, or placing traps faster, or being able to see people's footprints, or being able to eat a biscuit to get health back, or now being able to heal other people. And what this means for the game going forward is that we're going to have to do some reinterpretation of our understanding of class identities, because we're going to have to do another pass on the ranger at some point, because having survivalism be the other outlet of its identity outside of shooting stuff is totally fine, but it's going to need a restructure, because other than this really useful and very popular lately First Aid Mastery, Campfire Mastery and Trap Mastery and the Emergency Ration, those are survivalist things, but they just don't fit into the game as it is right now. So if we go into the direction that inspired First Aid Mastery and go from there, I think we'll be fine. But we need to do another pass and look at some of these bloat abilities that just don't really have a place in the game at all. And with the classes covered, and on that note about survivalism, I want to talk about what's the most important and most impactful change that happened with Season 9 that'll have an impact on the game for a long time to come, and that is the reduction in deployment time for campfires from 10 seconds to 6 seconds. You might have missed this change because it was a single line in the patch notes that didn't really get a star or a highlight or anything like that. It just kind of happened. And you might have noticed it in your gameplay lately. But I want to talk about why that's important to me and why that's important to the game. Another point that I bring up a whole lot on this channel is how, over time, Dark and Darker has gotten faster and faster and faster. And it's not just because of stats or move speed or anything like that, and not just because of map design, but it comes down to less and less abilities using charges that require a campfire to get them back, and the continual implementation or changing of abilities to be based off of cooldowns. Over time, the resting mechanic and the use of campfires has become more and more obsolete. It's felt like abandonware at this point. For those of you who are watching right now, I want you to take a second and think, what abilities outside of Second Wind for the fighter need a campfire to get them back? If it took you a second to think about an answer, then that's kind of my point. That deep role-playing game aspect of planning out your fights and deciding whether or not to use certain charges of abilities or expend a use of a certain ability, that has gone away over time, as more and more abilities are based off of cooldowns instead of charges. And with how quickly the game goes, there's not a lot of time left over to place down that campfire, take a rest and just think about the adventure that you're going on right now and enjoy the moment. And before, with how long it took to place down a campfire, it really took away from the experience to have to sit down and have to wait for however many seconds at a time, while other classes can just keep going and going and going, and it just takes them a couple seconds to get back to full capacity. They might only need to heal, but you, in order to be a functional class, might need to sit down for a minute or two at a time to make everything back up to 100% again. So it's not a perfect fix to bring the deployment time down from 10 to 6 seconds, but what it does do is it makes it less impossible to get that recovery in between fights, between encounters, between phases of your journey in the dungeon. And at the very least, for the future of the game, I think this change will give people more of that feeling back, and it'll make players stay longer and not just bounce off, because the draw of this game, I might put it up on the screen right now, but look at this loading screen. The fighter, the wizard, and the ranger settled around a campfire at a certain stage in their journey in the crypts. They've just had a fight. They might have just encountered other players. They might have taken the loot. They obviously win, right? But now they're taking a moment to recharge and rest around a campfire. And that's the draw, you know? That is the draw of this game, that you want that Dungeons & Dragons first-person experience. You want to live the role-playing game. And it draws people in. That's how I got here. But it makes new players that potentially could be the next big names, or at least players that could stay for a long time and contribute to the community. It makes them bounce off of the game for forever in some cases, when that adventure fantasy is not played out. And so, because it hits me in my feelings super duper hard, the campfire change is the most important one for me for Season 9, and I think it's the most important one we've had in a long time. Squire Royale might be bringing a lot of players to the game, but what might be causing a little bit of friction actually is the new security settings that were made baseline for the game this season. And unless you can comply with those on your machine, you can't get into HR and you can't get into arena modes. The changes have affected quite a few people, myself included, but what makes it an easier pill for me to swallow is the fact that there's a bigger picture here. If my sources are correct, there are two very large cheat-producing groups in the Eastern servers that have completely shut down operations for Dark and Darker because they simply can't get around these systems and make their products viable, which is very good news. It greatly reduces the amount of cheaters that we have, which we all know came from a certain country that we can't talk about. And recently, IronMace put out a patch that allows Linux users and Steam Deck users to actually play the game, which is a good change. I hope there can be a better fix in the future to make the game a little bit more inclusive again for people with all different types of hardware and all different types of systems. But if the end result is that there's less cheaters overall, I'm okay with staying in normal lobbies, especially as the game is on this upward trajectory and more players are sticking around. The game's going to increase operations and there's going to be more people coming. If we can make sure that the majority of those people aren't hackers, I think it's a worthy sacrifice for right now. For my last point of the video, I'll talk about the legal situation with IronMace, which has mostly been resolved. The South Korean Supreme Court finally decided that IronMace owns the intellectual property for Dark and Darker, that it might be slightly similar to P3 from Nexon, but the idea is unique to IronMace, so we're not going to lose the game right now. What this means for the game going forward is an overall positive, that there will be less money wasted on legal fees and PR. And with the case being over, IronMace has a chance to recover its reputation in South Korea in the business sphere and start to hire the talent that it needs to really make the game the best version of itself. With all that being said, Season 9 has been an awesome success so far. It's been a great addition to the Paul and Pauler series, and I'm looking forward to Season 10 and beyond. Thanks for staying to the end. Here's your Dwarven wisdom. So I hope you guys like the new background. I've gotten a lot of comments about my use of AI in my previous videos, and I try to stay away from making slop. AI thumbnails are everywhere these days. There's really no getting around it, but I feel like I'm getting better and better at what I do to be able to make something that's genuine, something that's real, and I spent probably a day and a half in Valheim making this background, so I hope you guys really like it. I'm enjoying Season 9. I'm playing as a dwarf fighter right now, the Mountain King. I'm mostly sticking around in normals. I'm doing a little bit of Squire Royale with a few of my friends, and I hope to see you in there. I'm having a lot of fun. I'm going to be doing a lot more playing than making videos this season just because I'm having a good time. But if something crazy comes up, I'll try to talk about it. Let me know if there's anything you guys would want let me know if there's anything you guys would like to see specifically, and I'll try to make that happen as well. I'm finally starting to get some more dates about my big move with this new job, so I'll keep you guys in the loop when I'm going to go dark for a long period of time as we move and eventually move into a new place. Hope to see you guys in the dungeon, and you can always catch me in one of Guild Leader's streams in the chat, or just watching, or maybe even playing with him or Prophet Jabib sometime. So that's all I got. Thanks for stopping by. Leave a comment. Let me know what you thought. Leave a like. Consider subscribing, and we'll see you guys next time. Good luck out there in the dungeons. Good luck in the dark. I'm the Mountain King, signing off.
Hi. Today we're going to be talking about Season 9.